So a passive house is special because it's a more comfortable building to live in than a typical building. It doesn't have drafts, it has fresh air, it's not cold near the windows, it needs very little heating, and it's just a healthier place to live. Oh, and the bonus is you use about 10% of the heating energy of a normal building.
Welcome to Green Energy Futures, your guide to the green energy revolution that's already underway. Hi, David Dodge here for Green Energy Futures. We've talked a lot about the passive house on Green Energy Futures. In fact, we even met the Saskatchewan father of passive house design, Harold Orr. But today, we're very excited to share with you the story of the largest passive house in Canada.
The Heights is a 6-story passive house. It'll be the largest passive house in Canada when it's completed. It's a mixed-use building. It has some retail on the bottom and 85 suites of residential above.
Located on Skeena Street and East Hastings, the Heights 85-unit building will help provide desperately needed new rental accommodation in Vancouver. And thanks to Vancouver's goal of getting to zero-emission buildings, this building will be built to a passive house standard that's 90% more efficient than a regular building. The project is being built by Peak Construction for 8th Avenue Development Group. Giza Zellerman of Cornerstone Architecture shows us what the super insulative passive house wall looks like inside.
So this is a wall mock-up that we did to see if our ideas actually can get built. It's a 2x6 structural wall on the outside, which is insulated, 2x4 rigid foam insulation with a polymer face that gets taped for our air barrier. And then we have a 2x4 wall for electricity plumbing, which is also insulated with this kind of insulation.
Scott Kennedy is with Cornerstone Architecture, and he's a director of Passive House Canada. He says that the City of Vancouver and the Province of British Columbia have provided a lot of support.
It's catching on big time thanks to work from the City of Vancouver. We've had a lot of leadership from the city. We've had a lot of leadership from the Province of British Columbia, including two $100,000 grants to Passive House Canada, which we use for educating professionals. And we've trained about 600 professionals so far in BC in the Passive House standard.
Vancouver loves the idea of the Passive House for several reasons, says the city's Green Buildings Manager, Sean Pander.
I think the city looks at it two ways. One is that, if we're going to address some of the big challenges that we're confronting, largely climate change being a big driver, we've got sea level rise, and we recognize that we're one of those cities that's going to live with the impacts. We've got the ambition to be the greenest city in the world by the year 2020.
Just how ambitious is Vancouver?
Well, in Vancouver, we're really striving to have all new construction, houses, office towers, residential towers. We're looking to have all new buildings achieve zero emissions by the year 2030.
We already know the Passive House is 90% more efficient. But just how tightly sealed are these super insulated homes? The so-called blower door test measures the air exchanges per hour of a home.
If I was to airtight test a normal house built in, my house, which is built in 1912, I'd probably get 10 or 12 air changes an hour. And if I built a well-built modern house, I'd probably get 5 air changes an hour. And in Vancouver, they legislated 3.5 air changes an hour about 2 years ago. So a passive house is 0.6 air changes an hour. It's a whole order of magnitude tighter, and that's the challenge for our crews on the site and what they have to learn how to do.
Vancouver's desperate for rental space and is willing to provide bonuses in zoning approvals if developers build rental properties. For example, a builder may be allowed to build 6 stories high instead of 4 if they commit to providing rental suites. Also part of the deal for getting favorable rezoning is a requirement to build better than LEED Gold standard. However, Scott Kennedy and his Cornerstone team approached their developer client with a very different idea.
So what we said to our client was, if we can do a passive house, I can save you having to put in that hot water radiant heating system, which in this building would be worth about $450,000. And since you're renting the building and you're going to operate it for the next 60 years, you won't have to pay the gas, you won't have to pay for the repair of the system. All that'll end up being on the electrical panel of the tenant. So why don't we actually do a passive house. And that gives me another $150,000 to work with, $600,000. Let's invest that in a passive house.
The developer liked the idea, and the City of Vancouver was so taken with the passive house standard, they've added it as an option that they will approve in support of their zero emissions building plan. Because the passive house is so energy efficient, very little heat is needed to heat the suites.
So you don't need much heat. We can heat with, I don't know, 300 watts in many of these suites. So really we're just using an electric baseboard heater, simple electric baseboard heaters for this building.
300 watts of resistance heating. That's amazing, and only about 1/3 the output of a hairdryer. So, now that this project is nearing completion, what's next for Cornerstone Architecture, Vancouver's passive house pioneers?
Right now we've gone from 1 to 16. So we have 16 passive house projects we're working on in the office right now.
Wow, this may be the dawning of the passive house revolution in Canada, and it gives new practical support to Vancouver's goal of building only zero-emission buildings by 2020. Want more on the largest passive building in Canada? Check out our blog, podcast, and photos at greenenergyfutures.ca. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel and check out our other videos. For Green Energy Futures, I'm David Dodge. Smitten by the idea of the passive house? Check out our video on Saskatchewan's first certified passive house and see our interview with Harold Orr, one of the fathers of passive house design.